music, science. It's the Amoeba People Podcast. Greetings and welcome to the Amoeba People Podcast, the show where science and music collide. Okay, collide is probably a little bit strong. It's a little more like science and music holding hands skipping through a sunlit meadow, but, collide sounds cooler. My name is Ray Hedgepeth. I am the singer-guitarist of the unabashedly nerdy science rock band, The Amoeba People. And on this podcast, we're going to break down our songs and go through the process of how we make ultra-dope science music. But the best part about this podcast is in each episode, we're going to bring in an expert in the particular field that the song relates to. So you're not only going to learn about the process of writing and recording songs, you're also going to learn about the science that inspires them. So for this, our first episode, we thought, let's go big. It's the first one, the first Amoeba People podcast episode that we're putting out there into the world. So let's go big. So what topic are the people of Earth starved for? What do you, oh fair listener, crave to know more about? And then we realized the obvious answer to that question is fossilized poop. I'm talking about coprolites, of course. Coprolites are what scientists call fossilized poo. So we have a new album out called The Fossil Record, and we've got songs about dinosaurs and fossils and geology and paleontology, and we knew that we had to have a song about coprolites. So I sat down and I wrote a song with the immeasurably creative title, Coprolites, and that's the song that we're going to break down today. And as if that's not exciting enough, I also got the opportunity to interview an awesome paleontologist named Dr. Tony Fiorillo, who works at the Perot Museum of Nature and Science in Dallas, Texas. He knows quite a bit about fossilized poo, let me tell you. And I'm going to ask him a bunch of great questions and a few dumb ones. But first, let's get to the music. So here's something to think about. People often talk about what legacy they're going to leave behind after they die. People want to be remembered fondly for the good deeds they've done, for the people they've helped, for the changes they've made in their world, for major accomplishments, things that will live on even after they're gone. But what if you have no choice in what legacy you leave behind? What if something that your body disposes of every single day of your life outlives the rest of you? What if your poo outlasts you? That's the main question the song asks, the central conceit of the lyrics. Some dinosaurs left bones behind, some didn't. Others left their feces behind. Yeah, it's a lot to think about. In other words, you don't always get to choose what you leave behind. Often, nature chooses for you. So here's the piano demo of the song. Just recorded on an iPhone.
Fossilized waste products from a distant time.
Intended to be kind of loungy,
I'll believe behind a legacy.
Picture a polyester suit.
Like the one that fell from that dinosaur behind.
Ruffled shirt. Out-of-tune piano.
What is there to do? What is there to do?
Providing my own background vocals there. Yeah, nice.
It's humbling, to say the least.
Pretty soulful. Yeah.
To see when all that's left of the beast are the remnants of the feast.
All right, that's enough of the piano demo. Pretty moving, won't you say? You get it? You see, it's like it's a Coprolites joke. It's a feces joke. Moving. I'm going to try to keep the poo jokes to a minimum here, but I kind of couldn't resist that one. Okay, so then the next step is now turning it into a song for the band. We didn't want to keep it that loungy, so our drummer Dustin Jordan came in and came up with a beat for the song. If it kind of reminds you of Devo's cover of the Stones' Satisfaction, that's intentional. It's a sort of flattened out version of that, I guess you could say. All right, now let's take that, let's add some guitar over that, and see what they sound like together. Make it a little more straightforward, not so loungy now. But now we bring in Mr. Mosley, Ryan Mosley, bass player of the Amoeba People. A little isolated bass there. Very nice. Okay, now we're going to take that and we're going to put that with the guitar and the drums. Let's hear what all three of us sound like together. The Meebs. They sound great, don't they? Even if we do say so ourselves. Okay, so, I got to play you these background vocals that Ryan Mosley did. We're going to listen to them isolated first. And now let's pop them in with the rest of the band. So now you can tell we really have a song coming together here as a band. And this is kind of how we do things. We start off with the initial idea, whether that's on acoustic guitar or piano or keyboard or electric guitar or just with vocal ideas. And then we build it piece by piece as a band. We create the arrangement. So this one was a good one to start with because Coprolites is a pretty simple song production-wise. It's essentially 3 instruments and some vocals. So now I do want to mention the tracks that we're listening to right now are raw tracks, which means that they are not EQ'd or anything. And we're doing that on purpose because then we're going to let you hear the polished, finished version of the song at the end of this episode. But before we get to the next part of our podcast, which is my interview with Tony Fiorillo, I want to play for you some isolated tracks that did not make the final recording of Coprolites. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, these are the isolated background vocal tracks from Mr. Dustin Jordan, our drummer.
There are many different species of dinosaur feces. Digging dinosaur deuces in Las Cruces. Prehistoric turds from reptilian birds. It's an excavation of dino defecation. Dino defecation is sweeping the nation. What you gonna do with the dinosaur poo? It's an excavation of digging dinosaurs digging dinosaur deuces in Las Cruces.
I know. I said that we were going to keep the poo jokes to a minimum, but I just could not resist playing you those tracks. Thank you for indulging me. Okay, before we get to our interview with special guest Tony Fiorillo, a word from our sponsor.
This episode is brought to you by Coprolites. Yes, Coprolites. They make excellent conversation starters, great doorstops, and fantastic paperweights. They're even perfect for juggling.
Is that a candy? Ow.
No, Billy, that's not a candy. You just chipped your tooth on a Coprolite.
A copper what now?
It's fossilized poop.
Oh.
Coprolites. Get yours today wherever fine tungstones are sold.
Paleontologist Tony Fiorillo is one of those people you hear about but are never actually sure if they exist in reality. I mean, his book, Alaska Dinosaurs, An Ancient Arctic World, begins with the line, "My first sighting of a polar bear in the wild took place under nearly ideal conditions." I've seen a polar bear under ideal conditions. I can't remember if it was the London Zoo or the Central Park Zoo or a zoo in Tokyo. Point is, as much as I can name drop international cities that I've traveled to where I've seen exotic animals in captivity, Tony is the real deal. A guy who has not only been to one of the most extreme environments on the planet, but returns there every year to live in a tent and discover new fossils and learn more about the dinosaurs that once lived in Alaska. This is a guy who for the last 22 years has been making pilgrimages to some of the most remote places in Alaska, and Alaska is already remote to start with. As if hunting dinosaurs in extreme conditions wasn't enough, he's chief curator of the Perot Museum in Dallas, Texas. He has a Ph.D. in vertebrate paleontology, and his qualifications and accolades are off the charts. I almost feel a bit bad asking him questions about something that seems as trivial as dinosaur poop. But here's the thing. It's not trivial to Tony. He brings the same excitement, curiosity, and wonder to 100 million year old poop as he does to hunting bits of fossilized bone in the Alaskan tundra. By chance, he happened to be here in Southern California for a paleontological conference, so I jumped on the opportunity and asked if I could stop in and interview him. He graciously said yes, and here is that interview, an incredible experience with an incredible scientist and an incredible human being, who I can say with certainty does exist in reality.
The term coprolite is from the Greek, and it literally means dung stone. Okay? And
oh, that's great.
The term was coined by...
I'm sorry. Dung stone. You guys hear that? Dung stone. Sorry, Tony.
That's okay. We're rolling. And the person who coined the word was a guy named William Buckland, who did it in the 1820s. Mm-hmm. And really, he was a guy who thought about a lot of things that we take for granted now. Mm-hmm. So it's, in the classic, if you could have a dinner with 5 or 6 people through time that you'd like to visit with, he's probably on my list. Wow. Because he just thought about so many things and connected so many dots that really set a course for paleontology. So he coined the term. And it's thought, because there was this relationship, collector-scientist relationship, and Buckland, by the way, was a reverend, as well as somebody who was very good in understanding the natural world. But Mary Anning collected rocks, fossils, along the south coast of England. And it's thought that she may have sent him a number of these things that he was able to figure out were coprolites. And Mary Anning is, do you know who she is?
Yeah. Oh, we have a song about her on the album. Yeah.
Yes, right, okay, of course. So Mary Anning may have inspired William Buckland to eventually come up with this term, but as it turns out, people had been figuring and noticing coprolites earlier, and so you can go all the way back to the 1600s, and the first mention of fossilized fecal matter, I think, is about 1679, a guy named Lister, but it wasn't the scientific illustration and description of it, and that comes a little bit later, but still in the 1600s. And so it's got a long history of study.
Dungstone.
Dungstone.
Wow, that is so great. Yeah, Tony is telling me that this goes all the way back to the 1600s, and all I can seem to ruminate on is dungstone. Nice. And then he told a story about being in the south of England and driving down to Lyme Regis, which is the coastline where Mary Anning made so many of her amazing fossil finds.
In southern England, a number of years ago, I rented a car just to drive to Lyme Regis because I wanted to walk the beach that she did.
Wow. What was that like?
Well, I thought it was pretty humbling. It was almost like, to me, it was like walking through a cathedral. Some paying homage to people who came before me. I just felt in awe of being there.
How high are those cliffs there in Lyme Regis?
Some of them were hundreds of feet.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
And honestly, the bravest person I ever met was this Polish paleontologist who, she was attending the meeting with me. She's now gone, but she was a giant in her own right. She spearheaded what's called the Polish-Mongolian expeditions of the 1960s, where we learned so much about the Gobi Desert and those dinosaurs. But Zofia, I told her what I was up to, and she said she would like to come, and I said sure. But as you know, in England, cars are set up opposite to what we are, and I'd never driven a car that way, nor driven an English road before. And Zofia still got in the car with me, and so I credit her as, never mind the monster paleontology project she did in Central Asia, she was the bravest person I ever met because she got in the car with me. So we could go pay homage to Mary Anning.
The closest the amoeba people have ever gotten to Lyme Regis is we were informed that our video for Continental Drift was played at the Lyme Regis Fossil Festival.
Nice.
So that was a few years back. So we've not been there driving on the opposite side of the road yet. That'd probably be quite dangerous if you've seen how the amoeba people drive. But that is the closest we have gotten. So someday, maybe, hopefully, we can make our own pilgrimage.
It's worth it. It's a beautiful little town, even without the history related to paleontology.
Yeah. What? And I don't know if there's an answer to this, but what is the largest coprolite ever found? Like, what is the biggest dung stone ever found that we have record of?
Well, I don't know what shows up at the Gem and Mineral shows, but I do know in the technical literature there was a team that described a dung stone from a Tyrannosaurus, and part of it was because it was so big, and by that it was something on the order of, we tend to measure things in centimeters as opposed to inches, and somewhere around 40 plus centimeters long, and possibly I think 10 or 15 centimeters wide. So it was pretty massive.
Wow.
Massive dung stone.
So if you know anything about fossils, you probably are aware that they form from hard structures like bones, because the bones stick around for a long time in the ground and there's enough time for them to fossilize. But what about softer things? I mean, how in the world does dung become a dung stone?
So there is an interest in, or an appreciation that microbes might play a role in sort of creating a toughness to it that allows it to be buried, and then the normal fossilization process starts. And so there might be something, there's a lot we don't know, and that's probably one of them, but it seems that microbes have a role still to be fully understood.
Next, I wanted to know how they actually go about identifying coprolites. How do you know something is actually fossilized poo and not just a hardened specimen in your backyard that you keep forgetting to scoop into the trash week after week? How does someone obtain the right qualifications and training to identify feces in such a specific way? It's important to know, guys. Somebody's got to ask these questions, right?
We're getting into some interesting conversation now.
We got to ask the important questions about coprolites.
There you go. We shouldn't be ashamed. You do draw a lot from what you see with the modern, and from that you're looking at surface texture and shape and so on, and those do tell us something. And is there somebody in the world who's like the premier expert on surface texture of poo? There are, as you might imagine, there's not a lot of them, but there are a couple of them, and they are at this meeting.
That's great.
But we did, for example, a study in Denali National Park in Alaska, where we had found things that looked like coprolites. How do we demonstrate that other than saying, this is a coprolite? Because to our peer, it would be like, why are you saying that? So we went through this exercise of, we had a student go to the local zoo and photograph what modern birds are doing, and it's the shape and the texture, and then of course what might be inside of it. And it's easy when you can find something with either the plant material still identifiable, or there's some crushed up bone of something in there.
So to identify a coprolite, you really need to know your poo. And the poo of lots of other species as well. Anyway, even though this is serious science, there's something about poo talk that we as humans can't help laughing at. And since I'm always on the hunt for great, corny science jokes, I asked Tony if he knew any good coprolite jokes. And to my great joy and satisfaction, he did not disappoint.
Do you know why the coprolite took a nap?
I don't know. No, why did the coprolite take a nap?
Because it was pooped. But let me elaborate slightly, because as scientists we name everything. And right or wrong, that's what we do, because that's the game we're in. And there's a term called bromolite, which is a term to describe anything that is related to the digestive system. So a coprolite is one kind of thing, and another one is, this is a formal term, called a urolite. And it
See
was
where this is going.
it was described from Cretaceous, maybe about the same age as close to the same age as the coprolites I sent you.
Just a quick aside. Yes, you heard that correctly. He did send me coprolites in the mail, by the way, but we'll get to that story in just a minute.
And by that name, you can imagine it was a spot where in dry sand, a bunch of fluid was released quickly and created this feature. And it was considered where a dinosaur might have peed.
Wow. So the feature itself, or was there any preserved liquid or sediment from the liquid?
No, it's a preserved feature of a lot of fluid being dumped in sand and then running off. So with that, do you know why you can never tell if a pterodactyl is in the bathroom?
I do not know why you can never tell if a pterodactyl's in a bathroom.
Because the P is silent.
Ladies and gentlemen, come on. That is brilliant. That is brilliant.
And staying within the digestive theme, do you know what you call it when a dinosaur passes gas? A blast from the past. And with that, I retire from the microphone.
How epic is that, huh? Okay, now on to the story about the coprolites that I received in the mail from Tony. Let's get to the Tony Fiorillo / Amoeba People origin story. At Dino Fest in LA last year, we saw a man approaching us. We were wearing our usual dorky outfits, our inspired by JPL engineers or NASA engineers of the late 50s and early 60s. And we're standing out by a food truck in between our sets, and we were going to get some food. And we see this guy with this incredible shirt walk up, and that's the first thing I noticed was this guy's shirt was really cool, and it was a shirt from the Perot Museum. And I believe, I don't know, I don't know if my memory serves me right, but I believe I complimented your shirt, and I think your response was, "Are you guys amoebas?" Is that how you remember it?
That's how I remember it, yeah.
Okay. And we were kind of shocked that like he knew kind of who we were, and then come to find out that he had seen our video for The Geologists Are Coming. And the rest is history. Coprolitic history, shall we say, because after we played the next set, which Tony was able to make it to, but you were heading over to give a talk. Is that what you were heading to?
Right, that's what I was there for, was to participate in a panel discussion.
Yeah, what was the panel discussion?
Well, last year the theme was polar paleontology, and so a bunch of us most of them work in the southern hemisphere, and I was, I think, the lone representative working the Arctic.
Wow, very cool. And so, but Tony was able to squeeze over to our set real fast before heading off, and he heard our Coprolites song, which is what this whole episode is about. And we exchanged some contact information, and lo and behold, not long after that, we received in the mail coprolites. I mean, actual fossilized poop, you guys. I mean, it was mind-blowing. And the best part of this story is when Dustin, our drummer, came over to see the coprolites, I have actually never seen a reaction from him like that over anything, ever. It was this sort of crazed, beautiful, electric insanity. He was holding the specimens in his hands and saying things like, I'm holding dinosaur poop. And, at the time I didn't have the heart to tell him that it actually was not from a dinosaur, that Tony had informed me it was possibly from a turtle or a crocodile, but not a dinosaur. But it gets even better. So he asks to take the coprolites home with him so he can show them to his girlfriend, Lindsay. And I'm like, sure, of course. And even if I had said no, he would have taken him anyway. And so he gets home and he gets down on one knee and he opens up the small box of coprolites and he proposes to her. Now, granted, she was in on this. This was not a real marriage proposal. He simply says, "Will you look at these coprolites with me?" And she says, yes, I will. And they took photos of it. And we're going to put some of those photos up on our website. It's hilarious, you guys. The pooposal, I guess it would be called, the pooposal of Dustin and Lindsay, and it's just hilarious. So that kind of joy is what these coprolites brought into this young couple's life. But back to my interview with Tony, I did need to know one final thing. I mean, was this special, us getting coprolites in the mail, or did he just send coprolites to every science rock band out there that has a song about coprolites?
Do you often send fossilized poo through the mail?
I can tell you that you are the first recipient.
Yes! What an honor.
Yeah.
From Dr. Tony Fiorillo, the first recipient of coprolites in the mail. Wow, we are truly honored. I mean, that is something that we will wear proudly. Not the coprolites themselves, but the honor.
Well, that's why I had to make sure it was packed carefully so it would arrive and get to you guys.
And what was fascinating is when I opened it, I was immediately fascinated, and honestly, I was a little repulsed, like in a good way. Like I was like, because it made me think of, because it looks so much like poop.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I mean? So yeah. I'm used to seeing poop in the yard. I scoop it up and I get rid of it, but like here I am seeing this. So there's something that my mind immediately connected to. Oh, it's waste. You know what I mean? But then I had to keep reminding myself, but wait a minute, this is, how old did you say it was? The one that you sent to us?
That material is somewhere around 95 million years old.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No wonder Dustin was in tears holding these coprolites. Just the enormity of a number like that. It's so mind-blowing to think. And so anyway, thank you for sending us those coprolites.
You're welcome.
In case you're wondering whether our entire conversation revolved around me asking juvenile questions and him trying his best to be level-headed and scientific in his responses, the answer is, well, duh. Seriously, though, I did ask him about the big picture. Like, what is the purpose of studying coprolites, and what do they have to teach us about the distant past?
What my takeaway on the work that's been done on coprolites is that what it does is it connects animals to their diet, so it brings them to life as animals. And so, confirming that duck-billed dinosaurs may have eaten conifers, because now we have something that looks like a coprolite that tells us that instead of hypothesizing it. I feel like that's what coprolites do for us when it's available, is that they provide us a means to test dietary hypotheses. We have them even older than dinosaurs, and so the fact that they can literally last hundreds of millions of years is mind-blowing.
Which animals prior to dinosaurs?
Well, there are some sharks and things that they're not actually coprolites. They're certainly preserved parts of the digestive system. The food that after the shark died and the soft parts dissolved, this thing is left. And I think that the oldest coprolites come from what they call the Pennsylvanian Permian of Texas. And so now you're talking about a time before the evolution of dinosaurs. So I think if you go back to 300 million years ago, I think that's the oldest.
Wow.
300 million years. I mean, talk about your poo outlasting you. Seriously. So to close out the interview with Tony, I asked him if he would do a huge favor and if he would introduce our song Coprolites, and he was thrilled to do so. So before we get to that and before we close out with the song, the complete song Coprolites, I just want to say huge thank you to Dr. Tony Fiorillo for joining me for this conversation. Go and buy his book. It's on Amazon. It's called Alaska Dinosaurs, An Ancient Arctic World. And if you're in Dallas, Texas, drop into the Perot Museum of Nature and Science and say hello to Tony. Granted, if you're there in the summer, he'll probably be up in the Alaskan tundra digging for dinosaurs. But if you're there some other time of the year, drop in and say hi. And with that, one last time, here is Tony.
Hi, I'm paleontologist Dr. Tony Fiorillo. And this is Coprolites by the Amoeba People.
Coprolites, coprolites, fossilized waste products from a distant time. And when I die, I hope I leave behind a legacy like the one that fell from that dino's behind. Yeah, coprolites, Coprolites, fossilized waste products from a distant time. And when I die, I hope I leave behind a legacy like the one that fell from the dinosaurs behind, yeah. What is there to do? What is there to when your poo outlasts you? It's humbling, to say the least. When all that's left of the beast are the remnants of the feast. Coprolites, coprolites, fossilized waste products from a distant time. And when I die, I hope I leave behind a legacy like the one that fell from the dinosaurs behind, yeah. What is there to do? What is there to when your poo outlasts you? It's humbling, to say the least. When all that's left of the beast are the remnants of the feast. And when I die, I hope I leave behind a legacy like the one that fell from the dinosaurs behind.
This has been the Amoeba People Podcast. Thank you for listening. And don't forget to check out our new album, The Fossil Record, which features Coprolites, which you just heard, and many other great sciencey tunes. You can buy it at bandcamp.com/theamoebapeople or iTunes and Apple Music. You can stream it on Spotify and just about anywhere else that you get your music. And also be sure to check out our YouTube page as well. We've got some great science music videos up there. Please subscribe. And you can find us on most social media platforms as well, so drop in and say hello to us. Also, if you want to help support the podcast, which would be super awesome, you can find us on Patreon. So until next time, everyone, onward!